To my brother-in-law, Sher Singh Ubhi, who passed away on November 28, 2023. His support in the first years after I renounced my aviation career in 1990 to focus on the revival and conservation of Gurbani Sangit proved to be very critical. Satkartar, a very good morning to everyone. At the very onset, I would like to thank the International Council of Traditional Music and the Department of Fine Arts. My congratulations to Professor Francesca Casio for ideating this and doing all the hard work to make this panel session possible. And of course, I'm honored by the presence of all my co-panelists. Well, nobody marginalized GurSikhī or Sikh religion itself, nor its cultural assets, including linguistic riches, music, literature, pedagogical processes, crafts, or skill sets, including tool making and luthiery. Since the first quarter of the 20th century, aesthetico-culturally ignorant Sikh political leadership handling Sikh socio-religious and political affairs in a maladroit way ensured that the cultural genocide that followed was self-inflicted. When ideating and initiating the revival of the Gurbāṇī Saṅgīt Paramparā, the tradition of Gurbani music or Sikh music, it was clear that I needed to understand the reason or reasons, if multiple, how the revelation, reading, exegetical attendance and singing of Gurbani that shook the religio-political landscape of Asia in such an extraordinary manner and inspired multiple musical traditions came to an abrupt end. There could have only been one of the two reasons. One, the knowledge systems were not exciting enough such that it was deemed dispensable, this knowledge system that is, or two, its destiny was, even if inadvertently, thrust in the wrong hands. Bhagat Jayadeva is the oldest author of Gurbani. He is said to have been born in 1170 AD. The second oldest author is a Sufi master, Baba Sheikh Farid, born in 1173 AD. The last author, the 10th Sikh Guru, Sahib Sri Guru Gobind Singh, left his body in 1708 AD. That is, all the authors of Guru Granth Sahib lived and died in a span of 538 years. They all sang, albeit in over 60 ragas, but in 24 languages and 120 dialects. No other tradition, at least to my knowledge in Asia, perhaps even beyond, has such a linguistic and socio-religious ambit. Yet this tradition nearly died. Any or all traces that would have remained would have been fit for various kinds of museums subject to hermeneutical curves, as I call them, available, that is, for a scholarly assumption, estimation, and interpretation. When the actual meaning of a heritage asset is lost, that is all one can do, even if there was no prejudice and or malice towards it. Sikh assets were confronted with a lot of prejudice, on the other hand. Malice and intentional ignores. But I would rather leave that for another time, another discussion. Guru Granth Sahib, the Sikh sacred scripture, is written in Gurmukhi script, chosen and recovered by Sahib Sri Guru Nanak Dev, but used by his spiritual temporal successor disciple, the second Sikh Guru, Sahib Sri Guru Angad Dev. Dozens of languages and dialects, but all scripted in a simple to write and read script without any translations. Now that is unique. A fact which is yet to be perhaps even discovered, studied, acknowledged, and celebrated. Until a few decades ago, no low caste had any access to Vedic knowledge. They could not read Sanskrit, which is considered to be the Dev Bhasha or language of the gods and goddesses. Guru Nanak Dev ensured that knowledge was endowed upon those considered the lowliest of the low by way of the Gurmukhi script. The summary of the Vedic knowledge, criticism, corrections, contemplations, reflections were also shared. Emancipation or nirvana attained and celebrated. In the binding, the works of those who belonged to the highest of the castes and clans and the lowliest of the tribes were included. This was the revolution that Guru Nanak Dev caused. Irrespective of the simplicity or complexity of a language, he proved that revelation of knowledge is not thwarted, and that Niranjan, Nirankar, the genderless, nameless, formless creator, is not any monolingual entity. Ever since I began learning from the two brothers, Bhai Avtar Singh and Bhai Gurcharan Singh, who were the younger cousins of my grandfather, born in 1897, died 1986, I would occasionally hear them lament the near extinction of the heritage music of the Sikhs. They would rue that no one was learning it anymore, nor were the listeners asking them to sing compositions dating back to the respective authors of Gurbani. In November 1989, after having been selected for the Indian Air Force's 147th Flying Pilots course, I renounced my flying career to focus on the revival of the lost heritage of the Sikhs. Over 27 elders I worked with. The next point I would like to share is that the sustenance of living knowledge system, which is still in a non-fossilized state and or an art form, is unlike conservation of tangible heritage assets. Very early in my fieldwork and education, I created a 4-stage process to attend to indigenous wealth or Punji, identification, Punji evaluation, Punji consolidation, and Punji or wealth dissemination. When an instrument dies, the tools die. The know-how of making and using the tools, various allied arts and skills related to the instrument and its parts, the playing techniques, repertoire, and established etiquette to play the instrument in public as part of a social, religious, or a political ritual or in personal spaces, all dies. When a rag dies, can one just copy, reuse the name, albeit by associating a new rag form created based on assumptions, estimations, and or interpretations? The indigenous pedagogical process does not believe so. If a knowledge dies, we honor it with a tombstone, if I may. If we take the name of an extinct rag, composing a new rag form estimated to be similar or close to the original, we suffix or prefix it with the author's name to mark the era in which it was duly composed or modified. For example, Shuddh Malhar, Mare Pai Rezadav Mare Pai Re Mare Shuddh Malhar. He Gobind, He Gopal. Guru Arjan Dev's late 16th century Dhurpad in Rag Shuddh Malhar, one of the, perhaps the only Dhurpad in this Shuddh Malhar surviving. But then Mian Malhar created a new raga. He sang Shuddh Malhar as well with the Gandhar. The Talwandi exponent Ustad Niyaz Hussain Shami used to sing Dhurpad of Tansen and Shuddh Malhar, which uses the third sharp, the Tivra Gandhar and the Tivra Nikhad. But then the one with the Kafi Mela is called Mian Malhar, just to give one reference. Indigenous knowledge does not mean an inferior or lesser knowledge, nor superior or better. It is just a heritage asset as any other, with its own uniqueness, histories, and narratives. Bureaucrats have a very short departmental memory. To rely on this class of administrators to conserve heritage has proven to be fatal, with the entire spectrum of socio-cultural and linguistic riches nearly becoming extinct. After 75 years of Indian independence, a serious rethink and re-strategizing is indeed needed. Uncontrolled migration or influx of foreigners does not only bring challenges to physical and mental health, but impacts the memory systems, value systems, cultural traditions, languages, and pedagogies. It was clear that the South Asian elite wasn't literate enough to counter the silent socio-political and socio-cultural genocides. The destruction tend amount to a cultural genocide at the project site of Anād, a conservatory exclusively dedicated to the study of arts, aesthetics, and cultural traditions, situated at a thematically chosen site of Kila Sarai Sultanpur Lodi, was not perpetrated by invaders or colonizers. They were Sikh, Hindu, and Muslim Copts and politicians who were supposed to protect the heritage and the chief protagonist, not to destroy it and attempt to kill him. Without power as much as needed and funding or wealth as much as needed, no civilization can survive. Individual efforts such as mine, howsoever noteworthy, honorable, sensible, selfless, kind, and visionary, can only do as much. But then, what power, what wealth? Real knowledge and real art is what no money can buy, no power can conquer. But then, what uses power and wealth in the hands of those who aren't intelligent, wise, insightful, and who lack the ability to discern? If one has power but begins to worship oneself and or starts getting worshipped, but not the ones who granted or enabled that power. Somebody may have all the money and wealth that there is, but do not become a dani, a donor or a great patron. In the words of Guru Nanak, Samund Sa Sultan Giraha Seti Maldhan, in his jap, one's worth is less than an ant. Kiri Tulna Hovri. According to him, Guru Nanak, that is. When India chose to become a republic in 1950 without taking into account how kingdoms and zamidaris attended to and sustained the socio-cultural wealth and heritage of the nation, everything was changed overnight without any provision to sustain and conserve. Perhaps such an abrupt end to the socio-cultural evolution of a people hadn't been seen in history. It is a case of a self-inflicted cultural genocide. Virtuosos, maestros, master potters, weavers, spinners, cobblers, artisans, sword-making shiklikers, artists, poets, writers, warriors, historians, and others lost livelihood that night. Sikh heritage too became a casualty. And do not think for a moment that Hindu music or Muslim music didn't die or didn't get a near fatal hit. The actual story isn't being told. Khayal, for example, is a semi-classical form, Upshastri Sangeet, but not heritage music. All of these genres like tappa, thumri, tabla, which aren't either, sitar, for example, surbahar isn't, but they have now been gaining their own histories. For none of the exponents of these later genres or instruments are considered to be living librarians of South Asian music. Those who were disenfranchised or weren't considered chaste enough to play the Rudrabeen or Dhurpadi or Hindustani Rabab were given a sarod according to their own histories. The ones who would not be allowed to play the been, now being mistaken as a Rudrabeen or Veena, were given the Surbahar and Sitar. Those who wouldn't be taught the actual grammar of music, Chant, Dhurpade and or Pade, Tuke, Ikpade, Dopade, Tepade, Chaupade, Panchpade, Ashtpade, Solhe, etc., and endowed with seminal works of the composers from the 11th till the 18th century, were taught semi-classical or Upshastra Sangeets, such as the ones I've mentioned. Considered the genres that were considered lesser in stature. You need to have a look. Look at Sridhar Bandyopadhyay's Geet Sutra Sar, written in 1885 AD in Bangla, in Kolkata. Who does alap now, for example? Do we see any Khayaliya sing alap? Many of them new. Look at the Agra Gharana exponents. But was it like that before? No. Everyone had to learn and sing alap. Can a rag live without its alap? Compositions are derived from the rag and its alap, but they are not the rag itself. But I guess nobody is interested. Yes, I am in mourning for the loss of Sikh heritage after a fieldwork of 38 years and running. I have realized that I am not the only one who mourns. I have company. Scholars need to have another look. I have been able to recover enough of Gurbani Sangit from the ruins of South Asia to state that the remains of this rich heritage is still a reservoir of untapped knowledge. Hopefully, after decades of ignoring and cold shouldering, howsoever inadvertent, some serious mapping and analysis can be done. Now, I would like to show a few images of the instruments from excerpted from my presentation, which is called Musical Instruments of Gurbani, Kirtan, and Bhakti tradition. And this is a 13, 14 hour long unfinished work. It just became too long. I never touched upon it. But let me show this graph to you. I did this maybe 20 years ago. Guru Nanak's era, 1469 to 1539. He was 70 when he left his body. But the instruments that came into being, came into the practice of Gurbani Sangit were the Dhurpadi Rabab, the one that he modified, which had 6 strings, according to Sadiq Ali Khan in his work Qānūn-e-Mausiqī, written in 1874, published at Nai Sadak in New Delhi, in Old Delhi rather, and the Pakhavaj that came during his era. Then we had Guru Amar Das's period, 1479 to 1574. He was the Guru for 23 of those years that he lived. And he was 73 when he became the Guru. He was widely traveled. He did all the 68 tirthas, Atsat Tirath, and quite a scholar, musician. He is said to have invented the classical form of the saranda, very unique form. Perhaps I'll try to show an image or two of the one that I was making, and also the one at the Victorian Albert that I shot in 1996 during my fieldwork. Guru Arjan's period, he's the fifth Guru, is 1563 to 1609, when he was martyred at Lahore. He is said to have inspired and created the jodi, the instrument, the name and the instrument that I was fortunate to revive. The first one, in fact, first project that I did. The playing techniques, the size, the dimensions, the nikas, and of course the repertoire and the etiquette of playing along with the dhurpat. The sixth Guru brought in the era of the warriors among the Sikhs, and the martial balladeers came into the scene with their dhad sarangas, the dhad rababs, etc. And these instruments. Guru Tegh Bahadur, the ninth Sikh Guru, was a fascinating Pakhavaj player himself, and my predecessor in that tradition. The instruments that we usually see in Kirtan, Dilruba, harmonium, tabla, and dholak, the way they are played, they're not really heritage instruments. The 19th, 20th century events. This is the first time some of the instruments in decades are seen on stage. Thanks to Baba Sucha Singh, my work was already in progress, but then because he organized this major festival in 1991 called Aduti Gurbāṇī Saṅgīt Paramparā, you can see the second person on the right is Sardar Beyan Singh playing one of my ancestral tausas, and there is of course Pyara Singh Padam with the Dilruba, Gurcharan Singh with the saranda. It was something that he made, and by Chatar Singh, extreme left, with his Dilruba. And there are three, of course, string, percussion, wind instruments that we have. We have the string instruments like the rabab, taus, saranda, etc. that were played. Mridang, Pakhavat, Jodi, Dholak, Kansiyan, Khartal have been played in Gurbani Sangit. Yes, and then the wind instruments, they have been played outside in the martial tradition or as part of the rituals. Or processions, but the only wind instrument used in the practice of Kirtan, the highest, form of worship among the Sikhs, is the Kanthavina, the human voice itself. The 10 Guru period, of course, 239 years, but then since 1708, 80, 300 years, and then the partition of India, etc. 461 years, the evolution and sustenance, the stories of evolution and sustenance. But then the last 77 odd years, it's been a massive, decline and nosedive. Here's some of the images of me handcrafting the rabab of a copy of Ustad Basat Khan's rabab, who was a direct descendant of Mia Tansen. And this is the ornate instrument, experimental works with some of the gold work and chipped diamonds, etc. Done for, again, dedicated as part of my collection. This is me playing in the Gauwas and Betak. This is the rabab of the fifth Sikh Guru Sahib Sri Guru Arjan Dev Maharaj at Pairupa, a village, with his descendants. Bhai Baldeep Singh is the current custodian. This is a saranda handcrafted by me way back many, many years ago. This is a comparison between the folk saranda and the classical one. This is over 3 centuries old in my collection. This is at the Victorian Albert, the same saranda, my shots from 1996, some quick images of me hand carving my own design of a saranda, and I would teach my students quite a fun. This is Siddharth artist who did some artwork on tribal artwork on a 24 karat gold leafing, etc. And this is in my collection as well here. The Rabab family and then the Taus The Mayuri Veena, this is an 1886 instrument made by Nihal Singh Namdhari of Taran Taran. I helped the Victorian Albert identify this. This is a 240 years old Baba Sharda Singh's taus in my collection, thanks to my granduncles, Bhai Avtar Singh and Bhai Gurcharan Singh. Another image of the same. This is my great-grandfather, Baba Narayan Singh's taus, also played extensively by his younger brother after 1905, by Sahib Jwala Singh, one of the legendary figures. This was the first taus built after 1949 in 1995 by me, under the guidance of, and the first one to be recorded in the history of audiovisual industry. And of course, in my collection, you can see me second on the left, from the left, putting the joint of this taus taught by the gentleman on the extreme left, Gyani Harbhajan Singh Mistri. And Gyani Krishan Singh, of course, started making the taus after my work. This is the legendary master luthier who died in 2005. He was a World War II veteran. Without him, of course, there would have been no possibility of revival of the instruments, because I needed to have a link, not just an assumption or interpretation. This is my legendary great-granduncle, Bhai Sahib Jwala Singh, a 1935 photo, grand freedom fighter who represents the uncolonized Sikhs. My granduncles, Bhai Avtar Singh, in the center, playing the taus in 1949 in the All India Radio studios. This is a taus that I handcrafted for him after that gap. Oh, let me show you. This is him playing the taus that I made for him in 1996-7. And the bows that I had to invent and create, because I couldn't find a bow maker who had the know-how. So I had to rely on the memory of the elders of how they were. This is how I designed in 2007 in Via Fontana in Milan. And this is the master bow maker, Nicola Galliena, who specializes in Baroque era bows. He's a dear friend of mine ever since, and he made these bows. My designs were brought to life by him. And here is my taus with the bow handcrafted by the gentleman. The jodi, of course, is the jodi. Lastly, the instrument that I had the chance to revive and recover, an extraordinary instrument, and the voice of Bhai Arjan Singh Taragar to end this conversation, my sharing, my 2 pence. I think I've gone over by about 2-3 minutes. Thank you very much.